Well, good morning. My name is Jeremy Ito, and I'm a gift officer for Warner Pacific. And joining me is Bill Dunn. Bill, do you want to say just a few words about who you are and your connection to Warner Pacific?
Hey everybody, I am a alumni. I graduated 1969 from Warner with a degree in psychology. Met my wife there. I've been married for 52 years, and I'm a huge believer in Christian education. Have a strong heart for what's going on there on the south slope of Mount Tabor.
Well, we have been having several conversations, and one of them is around planned giving. And I'm excited about this conversation because, ironically, I started to plan our family's will, and we printed it off, and we're about to take it down to the local credit union to have it notarized. And COVID-19 happened, and so everything shut down, and we were actually not able to get everything finalized. So it's sitting on my desk. How common is it, Bill, for people just to kind of put this stuff off?
It's very common. As a matter of fact, 3/4 of all Americans die without a will or a trust or anything at all. So the fact that you've got it on your desk and ready to go for signature, you're ahead of most people already.
Yeah, well, I know that, this is something that I've been thinking about probably, since we turned 30. I remember us sitting down with our insurance agent and making sure that, we had some things in place, but the will kind of fell off the radar. And it wasn't, I'm 41 now, so almost 10 years after I started thinking about this. I'm
Right.
finally getting around to actually wanting to do it. And as soon as things loosen up, I'm hoping to get that done. But what are some of the reasons why people don't get around to doing this, setting this up? And maybe, well, I'll let you answer the question first and I'll ask a follow-up.
Well, most of it surrounds fear, Jeremy. We are a society of procrastinators, and we don't do the things that we're afraid of. And so we don't like to deal with our own mortality. Nobody likes to talk about death. We get ourselves in a situation where it's just easier to not do it, and the next thing you know, 10 years go by.
Yeah.
There's a there's a real need to do it though, because whether or not you have a properly drawn will or a trust, if you die without one, the government has one for you. It's sitting there waiting for you, has your name on it. The only thing is that you didn't get to decide about what was going to happen with your stuff. Somebody else does.
Right. So you definitely want to be in control of your own destiny when it comes to this. What is the difference between a will and a trust for maybe somebody who doesn't know the difference between the two? Why would you need those things, and how do you know which one is right for you?
Good question. One of the questions that get asked most often. A will, a basic will, is a legal document that you spell out what you want to have happen to your estate. And when you pass away, it is taken to a court where there's a judge, and it enters into a process known as probate. And during probate, it's an open process where anybody that wants to can come in and take a look or be part of it. And the judge will decide whether or not your will is valid, whether or not the things you wanted to have happen in it are proper, and then he'll make the final decision. Often it just goes the way a person says, but if there are other mitigating factors, like there might be several siblings that don't get along, sometimes arguments take place. Perhaps there's an ex-spouse that gets involved. So a will is a legal document that spells out what you want to have happen. However, it goes through a process known as probate. A trust, on the other hand, is kind of similar in that you sit down and you decide what it is you want to have happen with your stuff. It is an open document so that anytime during your life, right up until the moment that you take your last breath, you can change it. You have full control over it. And once you pass, then it becomes binding. There is no court involved. There is no judge involved. It is completely private. There's no cost involved like there is in probate. Probate can often be costly. And so it's one of those things that most people ought to have. But again, it's that fear of the unknown, or being afraid of what it's going to cost, or not wanting to deal with their own mortality, not talk about death. And so it gets put off. And sometimes people think about it when 9/11s happen, or when COVID-19 happens. But then sometimes it finds its way to the back burner. So we spend most of our time just getting people to say, hey, let's take a look at it, because it's not complicated, doesn't have to be expensive, and it's very, very helpful, especially to those people that have a charitable urge. They want to do something significant outside. So
as people are thinking about this, what do they need to know about the taxes and how that works, and maybe ways that setting up a planned gift actually helps with taxes?
That's another good question. It's a great question, as a matter of fact. Most people understand at least enough about the legislative changes that have happened over the last, I'd say 15, 20 years. The gift taxes and estate taxes used to be a pretty significant tax load that was levied against the states. Now moderate estates are less affected by that. Now, if you're a person of wealth, or if you've got a family business, or you own serious amounts of property, estate taxes could be sizable, and they're not only on the federal level, they're also on the state level. But even if you were exempt and your estate was not of a size that would be affected by a gift and estate taxes, there are still other taxes that need to be accounted for. First of all, it's pretty inconvenient if you die mid-year, but your taxes are still going to be due at the end of the year. So there's a tax called income tax in respect of a decedent that your heirs will get to fill out your final tax return even though you're gone. There are other taxes, especially one that surrounds IRAs and pension plans that have been rolled over into IRAs. We have a lot of that today because there's a lot of flexibility with investments. And as you'll recall, taxes have never been paid on that money that is in an IRA. And again, death does not eliminate that tax. There are some things that can be done that might be able to defer it until a later date. However, it still has to be paid. And there are several little, what I call gotchas in the tax code, that unless that is set up properly, you can pay some serious significant taxes that are totally unnecessary. One of the things that's great about an IRA, and this is probably a topic for a different day's discussion, but that is there are some ways that taxes can be avoided on the IRA in its entirety, completely, if it's set up properly, especially if you have a charity, a 501c3, your local church, a place like Warner Pacific University that you're inclined to give to anyway. Setting it up properly, you can take those tax monies and redirect them yourself. But it does need to be done properly.
Well, that's definitely good to know. And I appreciate you being willing to share your experience in that. And speaking of that, I know that for you and Patty, you made a decision to set up your estate plan and include Warner Pacific University in that. Would you just share from your own experience why you made that decision?
Well, for us, Warner Pacific, when we look back on our lives, Warner Pacific is central to it. It's the education, but more than that, it's the mentors. You know, the Chuck Nielsen's, the Wilma Perry's, the Milo Chapmans. But most importantly, I think it's the friendships that we still carry, that we will carry on into eternity, actually. And so Patty and I, we're just ordinary people. We've been blessed, and we want to see the next generation experience these same kind of blessings. You know, Jeremy, everything in life is about relationship. And the relationships that Warner Pacific brought into our lives, we wouldn't trade them for anything.
That's so good. Well, thank you, Bill. I appreciate your generosity, and also just your willingness to share your experience and your time with us. It is a huge blessing. And I know it's going to help a lot of people who are asking some of these questions and trying to figure stuff out. As we continue this conversation, we're going to invite you back and allow you to do some plan giving series with us, some webinars to help educate people and do some Q&A type things that I think will be really helpful. Bill has agreed to volunteer his time really to help the university and help donors and supporters who care about students make a big impact. And even if you decide not to give to Warren Pacific, we still want to offer this as a resource because we just think this is really important. So Bill, thank you so much. Thanks for being willing to sit down with me and have this conversation with all of us this morning.
Thanks, Jeremy. Bless you, bud.
Yeah, have a good day.
Thanks.